prime reasons that...
Church of Mabus. Into the light. That may be your fantasy. Metaphysical. The dark side.
Haunted houses, anything horror, all of it. Oh yeah, he likes it. You mean I could go mad? I'm shaking.
The Church of Mabus.
Oh, I'm stoked. I'm ready. This is awesome.
It's Friday. Running a little late, but no big deal. First off, let me get my stuff together here. You're listening to 107.7 New Orleans and 105.3 Henderson Point, Mississippi. Had a few books to plug, and then we'll get to our guest. All these books are from schifferbooks.com. The Schiffer Books. Some great titles here. Seeking Bigfoot by Michael Newton. I've written and interviewed Michael Newton before. Last I talked to him, he was possibly very ill. I need to write him again to see if he's doing all right. Another book, Vampire Evolution, From Myth to Modern Day by Corvus Nocturnum, E.R. Werner. He's been on the show before. It's just a book about vampire stuff from myth to modern day, Forward by Rosemary Ellen Guiley. Another book by Michael Newton, Strange West Virginia Monsters. And that's by Michael Newton as well. There's a ferocious dog man. It can rip your head off picture. And then Ghost Hunting in Michigan, 13 investigations with one of the oldest ghost hunting groups in Michigan. These are all by Schiffer Books. They have a lot of really good paranormal books if you're looking for paranormal titles. So check out schifferbooks.com. Tonight we have me and Wham and also Jay. Originally it was just me and Jay, but I asked Wham if she wanted to sit in because it's Lovecraft. So we're just going to take turns asking questions and have a night of Lovecraftian madness. But first thing, I quit Examiner this week. I've been writing for Examiner for years and years and years, and basically for like sweatshop wages. And they just did some weird thing where every article you do has to get reviewed, and that's fine, but they tell you to change it, and then you start doing it that way, and then the next thing you know, they're wanting you to add something else to it and add something else to it. I just got sick of it, but the final line they got across was I put up an interview by Nick Redfern about his new book, Bloodline of the Gods. It's about the Rh negative or whatever blood types and all that stuff. And it's an interview by Nick Redfern. I put plenty of Nick Redfern interviews up there over the years, maybe about, 8 or something. And I get back this review thing saying they don't take paranormal articles and it has to have factual evidence. It just totally doesn't make any sense because I'm the paranormal examiner. They're smoking crack over there now or something. So I completely quit. And plus, I was making like $15 a month, so I think I'll live.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Ran into them as well, and you quit too, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, I have to make it official, but yeah, I haven't actually bothered to actually get online and do it, but because I want to. I'm not. They haven't dumped me out yet, so I'm going to make records of all of my links there so that I can go ahead and use my own articles if I want to make links. But yeah, I'm going to quit. They were just pulling some really weird crap. It's like all I wanted to do was make some simple grammatical changes, just improve the grammar of my last article, and they made it go through an entirely new editorial review just for that. And it was like approved the first time, and the second time it wasn't approved. And then I had to make some weird change in order for it to be approved just for like a grammatical change. It was bizarre. So it was like, screw you. What it looks like they're trying to do, as far as I could tell, is they're trying to become more mainstream or something. Whatever that means.
They don't even talk to you one-on-one ever. It's like this weird robot thing with the reviewing. You can't even talk to the reviewer. So what I did is I quit and wrote some nasty letter when the reviewer, so when it came up, they saw it this morning.
Well, good for them.
Support, they don't even really talk to you there either. They don't talk to you at all. It's really weird. It's like you're working for a robot that pays you sweatshop wages. Really.
Like I've done like 80 articles for them, and I think I've made like $30.
Gee, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy. So.
Yeah, well, my only thing is I didn't know. I heard that there's a way that you can like write something and then edit your article and take your article down, but you'll send it in for review and then it'll alert them, so they'll probably stop you if you try to delete everything. But the way I'm looking at it, most of mine are just interviews with people, so they can keep them and make $10 a month or whatever, and I'll just let them keep. I could be nasty and figure out a way to take them down, but I'm not going to. I'll just leave them up in honor of the writers and stuff so they can at least still have their books and all that info up for over the years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, all I'm going to do is just make sure that I have the link for each article so that, like, if I want to refer to it, I can. I'm not going to try to steal it or anything. I just want to be able to, like, if I'm referring to it, have the link for it. So I'll just record the link.
Your profile will still be up, and you just go to that. You just won't be able to post. I don't know if you can log in anymore, but your profile and stuff will stay up, and you'll just be able to
access that's what I think.
Yeah, that's pretty much, I'm pretty sure what happens. But, all right. Well, let's get to our guest. Tonight's guest is John L. Steadman on the book H.P. Lovecraft and the Black Magical Tradition, the Master of Horror's Influence on Modern Occultism. How you doing, John?
Oh, I'm doing real great. I'm loving listening to you guys.
Well, good to have you aboard, and I've been looking forward to this one. I was just blasting Nox Arcana. They have this weird Necronomicon-like music, like a whole soundtrack full of weird orchestrations of Lovecraft stuff. It's pretty crazy. It's just like this dark goth, weird instrumental like orchestration of the Necronomicon. It's pretty bizarre. I was blasting that for the last few hours.
Inspiration.
Definitely. And, well, I guess if you could, John, tell us a bit about yourself, like your bio, so to speak, so just our listeners will know who you are.
Yeah, well, I started out liking horror, fantasy, and science fiction, of course, when I was younger, and ghost stories. And I kind of discovered Lovecraft when I was in grade school. I was just sitting in the schoolyard. It was a beautiful sunny day, and I read The Color Out of Space. And I don't know why, but that story really terrified me. And then I was a confirmed Lovecraft person the rest of my life. And then I got into magic when I was in high school, practice of magic, and I did the standard kind of magical practices that people do when they start out, but then I started incorporating Lovecraftian themes into my rituals, and it was like just a jolt. It was a jolt. I mean, it was the difference between night and day between magical results. And so I kind of combined the two. And I really hadn't thought about writing a book or anything about Lovecraft. You know, I just took a bunch of different directions. You know, I got a bachelor's degree at Michigan State University in literature, and then I got a master's degree in literature also, and then I kind of went into the business world for a while. I got an MBA in accounting and finance, and then I decided finally, toward the end of all this, that I just wanted to teach. You know, I wanted to teach and write. You know, after I did all that, and so I went back and became a college professor, and then I started formulating this book. And then everything happened the way it happened, you know. The book, it took me like about maybe 3 or 4 years for it to get into the form it's in right now, and then that's where I'm at, you know. So I'm teaching, I'm a college professor right now, and I'm working on my second book, the follow-up to this book.
Nice. Good to know. And, yeah, there's something about the Lovecraft stories that just have always terrified me. And all the movies, like, there are a few good ones, but there's a lot of bad ones, too. But the movies, like, what is it, From Beyond with, the reanimated Jeffrey Combs and all that.
Yeah, Jeffrey Combs.
And disturbing. They're always very disturbing. And the Jeffrey Combs ones are all great. But definitely there's always, like, this otherworldliness to it or something. There's just something off, a bizarre feeling always associated with Lovecraft stuff.
Well, it's hard to capture. You know, it's hard to capture Lovecraft on film because he doesn't have a lot of women characters. Most of his women characters are kind of they're either witches or they're kind of demonic, frightening kind of women. You know, and so you won't find that standard love interest. You know, you're not going to find virginal young maidens falling in love with people. You're not even really going to find sexy, mature women bearing children or anything like that. You're not going to find homes or husbands or anything like that. So Hollywood has to put that nonsense in there. You know, and then secondly, filming Lovecraft's monsters, you know, the atmosphere they create, I don't care how good computer technology is, they still can't get that close to doing that, you know, because his things are just so out there, you know. There's nothing human-centric about the great old ones. So it makes it kind of difficult because you have to have a plot. You know, it's like when they do movies like Dagon, they'll have to add like a love interest. The main character will have a love interest.
Yeah, that's Stuart Gordon's Dagon. That's one of my favorites for sure. Guillermo del Toro was supposed to do Mountains of Madness, but I think it got canceled, and I think he was going to
it did. I think they'd have better luck if they tried to film the more extraterrestrial of Lovecraft stories, you know, like the Shadow Out of Time. You know, I think they might be able to handle the creatures in there because they're not really the great old ones in the form of gods or interdimensional beings, but they're kind of like more or less extraterrestrial entities, you know, from outer space, you know. So I think they'd have a little bit better luck there. The Mountains of Madness, of course, those are extraterrestrial entities too. So I think if they had a good budget, they might be able to do that. But, you know, they'd still have to add the love interest. I don't think there's one female character, now that I think about it, in Mountains of Madness or in The Shadow Out of Time. Not one female character. So they'd have to add the romantic stuff and things like that. But I think those would be possibilities. I couldn't see him doing the color out of space at all. I mean, that was just too weird. You know, you need too much.
I could see them doing the Whisper in the Darkness or something like that. Because that's actually a theme that's been sort of dealt with already. The idea of people being kind of, because it's really basically about people being abducted and you know, it's like their bodies are rejected and their brains are taken, and it's, you know, it's these aliens are coming in and basically reducing us to our brains and taking us to another realm.
That one they could do. They could do that because those are
There is one. You look for it on Amazon. It's really good and has good reviews. They did one. It's kind of independent, kind of weird, but it's really good. I mean, it's new, too. It's a couple of years old, at least.
Oh, it's A Whisper in Darkness?
Yeah.
Of Whisper in Darkness?
Yeah,
because actually that was my introduction to Lovecraft, and I read it at a time many years ago when it was like 40 years ago when I was just beginning to get into my paranormal research about UFOs. Scared the crap out of me, and of course now it's just sort of a favorite. But it's got a lot of the elements that people have already used in movies about being abducted and being transformed, because that's what's scary about it.
They could do that, I think, because they've just got the extraterrestrial entities in there too. So I think technology can handle that, but they'd have to kind of clean it up a little bit. Like Lovecraft actually has them transplanting brains back and forth in outer space, and they just carry them like they actually fly on wings in outer space, and carry the brains in metal canisters, So Hollywood would have to do something with that, because that's a little unsophisticated.
Well, yeah, I mean, but that's like back in, 1920s or something.
Yeah, he wrote that in 1930s, so we can't expect technological proficiency there so much, but it's a great story. By the way, you're talking about the UFO thing. You guys, you read the book, or you might even have him on the show, Jason Colavato. He wrote The Cult of Alien Gods. He actually argues that the whole UFO phenomenon actually stems from these works that we're talking about here. The paperback volumes of Lovecraft actually were disseminated among the military in World War II, and he argues that people like Eric von Daniken, the Chariots of the Gods, these people were actually directly inspired by these early stories, and then that's where the UFO phenomenon originated. Have you guys heard that theory?
I have not, actually. That's fascinating.
No, but I'm looking up his book, and I'll check it out for sure. I just found it on
Jason Colavato. I think he's got another one out, but it's called The Cult of Alien Gods. And he makes a really good argument that Lovecraft could be actually attributed to being the progenitor or the pioneer of the alien abduction theory. So it's a kind of a fascinating read. The guy's a skeptic like Lovecraft was, but it's a very good book.
Yeah, I'll just put it on my wish list, and I'll check it out later for sure. But yes, there is a Whisper in the Darkness movie, and you should both check it out.
I will watch it. I will definitely look it up.
I always watch them, no matter how bad they are. If they're real bad, I still watch them.
There's some terrible ones. Yeah, terrible, bad ones.
Well, I like some things are so terrible that they're just so much fun. I mean, I still am going to see them.
I love watching. I've been finding old, obscure '80s horror movies, and like some of them, you can't even. They were just on VHS only. And if you go to iOffer, you can there's these weird people there that sell all these old movies, and they just burn them to a disc and send it to you. And I've been getting them off of there. But there's some pretty wild stuff, man, out there for sure. And a lot of it is, possibly influenced by Lovecraft. Well, this is I got kind of a. Well, let's get Jay, and then I got kind of a two-part question. So, Jay, you got a question?
A two-part question.
I'm not. I don't know a lot about Lovecraft. My only and Jeff's gonna love this. My only introduction to him was through Dungeons and Dragons, the role-playing game. But I was looking at your book on Amazon, and we've had several guys on here that talk about magic. And one of our guests said that there's no bad magic, no evil magic. It's kind of like weather. It depends on your perspective. If the weather comes and destroys your crop, you call the weather evil. If the weather comes and revives your crop, you call it good. So could you kind of define for us between white and black magic? Is it good and bad? Is it good versus evil? Or is it just when the magic affects whoever, that person would perceive it as bad or good?
Yeah, you're exactly right about that. The black magic I define all this in the first chapter of my book, because my book is geared primarily for science fiction, horror, and fantasy fans who don't know a lot about magic or maybe nothing about it. And they're curious about it because they hear all sorts of nonsense like people, you probably had people on the show that make the argument that Lovecraft was an unconsciously practicing magician or possibly a practicing one. You had Peter Levanda on your show, I think, one time, and I think he's going to be on again, and he argues that Lovecraft was actually in telepathic communication with Aleister Crowley and with Cthulhu, and he's got some really crack-brained arguments for it in his book, The Dark Lord, but what it is basically that Lovecraft was a complete skeptic and materialist, but he also was a dreamer, so there was a dual side to him. But getting back to the black magical thing, here, I define black magic as simply a magician who uses magic for either getting power or gaining knowledge. And then a white magician would be somebody that uses magic for spiritual perfection. Mm-hmm. And so that's the two distinctions. But you're right, good or evil can only be determined based on behavior and by actions. You mentioned earlier that the weather's bad, lightning strikes, and it's considered evil, right? So black and white has nothing to do with good or evil. I mean, a black magician can be described as good if he or she acts ethically. But if a white magician acts unethically, then they could be considered evil. And by unethically, I just mean simply their actions or their behavior is harmful to other people. So in Lovecraft's work, he views black magicians as basically black magicians because they're almost always involved in gaining knowledge and power of some kind. But they're not necessarily evil. Some of them are, like Joseph Curwen in the case of Charles Dexter Ward. He performs necromancy to raise the spirits of dead people, and that's not an inherently evil action, unless you believe that dead people have rights. You know, but Curwen also commits wholesale murder in the story, so he's an evil man, obviously. But in other Lovecraft stories, like The Music of Eric Zahn in 1921, and in The Strange High House in the Mist, both these have magical practitioners. That latter one was to simply gain knowledge and power. So good or evil has nothing to do with black and white.
Yeah, and I noticed you talk a lot about, for the black magic, it's Dionysian or Bacchanalian in nature. So is it also not just pleasure, or not just gaining power, but also for pleasurable means, whereas the white magic is more for trying to help people rather than, do something?
Well, what surprises a lot of people, they think Aleister Crowley. You guys all know about Aleister Crowley. I'm sure you've had people who've written books about him. Well, Crowley has always been interpreted as a black magician, but most of his career he was actually a white magician. He started out in the Golden Dawn, and the Golden Dawn is a white magical system. In other words, you use it to climb the tree of life symbolically or metaphorically and then attain perfection. And Crowley all his life talked about gaining the knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel, your higher self, right? So that's a white magical goal. So Crowley was basically a white magician. But black and white magicians can both have fun. They can do it for pleasure, right? Like Crowley used sex as a magical tool to gain spiritual perfection, but he also had sex to have fun, right? And the same thing with a black magician. A black magician can have fun as well. They can enjoy themselves. But when they start behaving unethically, then we go into the realm of evil as opposed to good, So that's the only difference, But yes, you can do magic to have fun. And gaining power is fun. But when you use power to dominate people, then it's becoming something a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the problem with, I don't know about for Wham or Jeff, I'm not that not that into the magic. The real magic, like I said, I know it only from the fictional Dungeons and Dragons world, but a lot of people probably misconceive it as black being bad and white being good, just like in the old westerns, the guy with the white hat is always good, and the guy with the black hat is always the bad guy. So there's that huge misconception, I think, and hopefully if people read your book, they'll snap out of that stereotype.
Well, I clarify all that at the beginning, and then after that, in Chapter 2, I talk about Lovecraft, exactly what he knew about Western occultism. So after you read that chapter, you know everything about it. There's no more questions about it. And then I show how Lovecraft's stories developed the basic magical methodologies. And then after a digression on the Necronomicon, I had to write about the Necronomicon because people that don't know anything about it, they always hear about the Necronomicon in connection with Lovecraft, so I needed to have those chapters for them. But then after that, it's just totally, I launch right into Lovecraft's connection with the great black magical systems in the Western world, and that's the latter half of the book, Chapter 7, all the way to the end. So it's for people that don't know a lot about magic, and yet for New Agers, it actually clarifies a lot of their thinking and categorizes and simplifies a lot of the confusion about. So it's for anybody that's interested in these topics, but I've geared it primarily for the horror, science fiction, and fantasy. And if you notice my endorsements at the front, all those endorsees except for Don Webb, and by the way, Don Webb, he's a Sethian priest, which is an offshoot of Satanism. I think you're probably going to have him on your show, too. He's got a book out about Aleister Crowley recently. He's been on a couple times?
He's been on twice.
Yeah. Has he? But all the people that I've got to do endorsements, like S.T. Josie, he's just a scholar. He can't stand magic. He's an atheist. He can't stand magic. But all these endorsers, you'll notice, are all science fiction, fantasy, and horror writers. They're all movers and shakers in that field. So the book is primarily geared for that clientele, that genre.
Well, that's definitely that's me. I'm into science fiction. I'm not a huge fan of horror, but I do like some of the old horrors, like Friday the 13th and Freddy Krueger movies. Those are all pretty good.
Well, I was going to say you need to watch more horror movies, son.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, the night I had a paranormal experience, I was messing around with that Necronomicon Simon paperback, and I was experimenting with all kinds of things and fear and loathing type situations, and I was at a lake, and I was with some friends, and it was on Halloween night, and I screamed stuff from that book like an idiot, like a complete idiot. And I saw weird beings that night that were very reptilian-like, serpentine-like, and I call them the serpentines. And one of them looked like it had tentacles on its head, and another one was very hydra-like. And I came across some other encounters of people who had encounters with a being in Georgia where I had mine at, and North Carolina and some other places, who were complete strangers who have seen a weird tentacle-headed creature, which, the tentacle head, I don't know what that is. It was kind of... Do you
remember what you were reading from the Necronomicon? What ritual were you doing? Do you remember that?
I honestly don't remember. I can't remember. I recently rebought those books again, and part of me is like, I've looked through them and read some of them, but there's still like this weird fear that I have just around them in general.
Well, that stuff is very tricky. A lot of those Necronomicons, I deal with this in chapters 3 and 4. In 4 is the one where I deal with the Simon Necronomicon. That book is very tricky. You want to be a little careful with that. Like the only ritual I've used from the book is the ritual of the Watcher. And I use that to evoke a creature called the Watcher. And what the Watcher does, it kind of protects your magical working area, because usually Western magicians work in a circle, and the circle kind of protects you. But Necronomicon magic in the Simon book, there is no circle, so you have no protection whatsoever. So you evoke this creature to kind of patrol the area to make you safe. And that ritual was very, very effective. You actually see the creature. It comes up, and it'll take whatever forms your unconsciousness or whatever fears you have in your mind, it'll take those forms. And it's a very fascinating book, because even if you have no training when it comes to magic, and you're not used to seeing these kind of things, which you're not, still you can still get these things anyhow. They'll come up whether you have training or not. So it's a very tricky book. A lot of people argue people shouldn't probably mess around with it, and so It looks like you experienced that yourself.
Had a lot of UFO sightings too, and I've seen beings of light. Also, at one point, little beings in cloaks standing around a black box. I've had a lot of different weird encounters. But we've had Peter on before, and that's one thing I wanted to ask you. We kind of beat around the bush when we interviewed him about it, and it's kind of like to me, I think it's true, and him writing Dark Lord's kind of an admission of it, but do you think he was involved with the Simon crew that wrote those paperbacks?
Yeah, see, now I'm getting a lot of comments about that from some of my people on Amazon. They're buying my book. There's a
I saw some reviews, and just to tell you, a lot of those people on Amazon, I have a Bigfoot book. There's a lot of jerk-offs on there.
Yeah. Well, I expected that. I expected when I wrote that chapter that a lot of people would crawl out of the woodwork from the 70s. Back then, it was kind of customary for some magicians to they liked hoaxes, they liked to pretend, they liked funny names and stuff. And Simon, of course, now the argument, of course, is that Simon and Levander are the same person. And what I do, I have a footnote in my book. I think it's footnote number 100 for chapter 4 or something, if I remember rightly. I don't have the book in front of me. But I actually deal with the issue of whether Simon and Levander are the same person. And I've gotten comments from people that that are really they're really enthusiastic about this issue for some reason. To me, in my book, I mentioned that I don't really care ultimately who wrote the Necronomicon. I don't care if Simon wants to pretend to be Lavanda or Lavanda wants to pretend to be Simon. I don't care about that. That's kind of sophomoric kind of behavior. But I do believe I'm going to be a scholar here, and I reserve judgment. Like one person called me to account saying that why is he still perpetuating this hoax? I'm not perpetuating a hoax. Until Simon comes out in the public eye and says, I am not Peter Lavanda, or until Lavanda himself comes out and says, I am Simon, I'm going to keep an open mind on the issue. For some reason, there's no clarification on that. And Lavanda is not owning up to being Simon, and some people argue that he actually is Simon, and he was actually the person that authored the Necronomicon. And so I'm going to keep an open mind on that issue until either Lavanda admits he's Simon, or until Simon comes out and admits he's not Lavanda. So I'm trying to be a scholar about this, but this issue hasn't been resolved yet, so I'm not sure who's who here.
Is this Simon guy even saying anything now in our modern time period at all?
Well, he's still publishing. Like he's still
publishing. Yeah, because I've read subsequent things that he's written, so or that are attributed to him.
His most recent book is something called Papal Magic, where he argues that there was magical practice in the Catholic religion and among the popes, and that's his most recent book. But he also wrote two other books after he released the Necronomicon. He wrote one called The Dark History of the Necronomicon, Dead Names, and that tells about how the book got written. And then he's written one also called The Gates of the Necronomicon, where he actually kind of flips his original thesis on the side and argues that the Necronomicon is based on the 7 stars of the constellation Asia Minor rather than the 7 planets. So he kind of undercuts his original thesis in the original Necronomicon. But Simon is still publishing, and he's still claiming to be a mysterious occultist known as Simon. And then obviously Lavanda is still publishing too. You guys interviewed him for the Dark Lord, so I'm going to just let these guys have their little hoax and their little fun and stuff, and I'm going to just stand back, and when they come out of the woodwork and say, I really am this person or I'm not this person, then I'll listen, I'll say, well, that's great, we finally got that resolved. It took like 40 years for you guys to own up on it, but that's fine, I'm happy.
I don't know if you're familiar with a book that Lavanda wrote. He published it not too many years ago, and I have to run downstairs and get the name of it, but I actually own it. And it's a book that he wrote about the number 7 and various mystical systems, like ranging from the Kabbalah through Taoism, and there's a big chunk of that book that overlaps significantly with the Gates of Necronomicon. And to me, it's like if you take both of those books, like that first part of the Gates of Necronomicon, where he's talking about the 7 stars of the Big Dipper,
Yeah.
And when he was talking about that, and then his whole discussion about this recurrence of the number 7 and the 7 levels that is in this other book. To me, it's like it's undeniable that he's at least connected to that.
It's very possible.
It's to me, I've always thought that Simon, whoever Simon is, Simon might be sort of a pseudonymous collective, especially in the beginning. When that Simon represents maybe not just one person, but maybe a collective of people who produced something when they were all hanging out at Magickal Child together.
Yeah, that's a perfectly valid argument. What I do in that footnote I'm talking about, I put forth my premise that probably Simon and Lavanda and possibly some other people, it is a pseudonym, and it actually was the way that you said on internal evidence of their styles, because if you compare the style of Simon and Papal Magic, and then the same style in the Dark Lord, there's a similarity, but I'm a scholar, so until I get some actual empirical evidence on that, I'm going to reserve judgment, but an argument can be made that Simon was just a pseudonym, and the book itself was generated by a collection of people at the magical child. The important thing is, at least in my chapter 4, is I don't really care that much about, because whoever compiled that book, and I'm not arguing that's actually the genuine Necronomicon. I don't believe there is such a thing as a genuine Necronomicon.
Right.
But I am arguing that that book, out of all the other books, it has rituals that really, really do work. They actually get results.
Yeah, I mean, I've also done the Watcher ritual. And I mean, I've done like several rituals. Like, there's also a spell book of the Necronomicon.
There sure is. Yeah.
And I've done a couple of those spells, and I've done the Watcher ritual, and I've gotten some pretty interesting results. Actually.
What did the Watcher look like when you conjured him? What did he look like?
You know, with me, he looked very much like a very intense man. You know, an elderly, intense man with sort of weird energy around his head.
Okay. Was he bald? Did he have like kind of glowing eyes, that sort of thing?
Well, I don't know. I don't remember his eyes that much. It was almost like he had sort of a head covering on, but it was like he was surrounded with some kind of energy field. So I've actually more paid attention to that than I did his actual head.
Really?
But yeah, it was very much, because I actually, when I do these things, I pay more attention to the energy of something than I do to the visuals of it. Because for me, the visuals can come and go, but so I pay attention to just sort of the energy signature. But kind of how they come across, like what the personality is and that kind of thing. But then, you know, in my everyday life, appearance doesn't matter that much anyway. So, you know.
Yeah, but that's a sensible way to go, because, you know, I mean, the way that we see him is based on our own limited human conceptions, our own space-time continuum. So the energy is the thing that you should be paying attention to. It's like you step out on a highway and a car is coming toward you. You got to look at the velocity of that car. That's the thing that's going to kill you. It doesn't matter what the model and make of the car is or what the paint job is. It's the velocity of the thing coming toward you. That's the energy. And that's the thing you got to worry about. When I saw the Watcher, I was doing a conjuration up at Lake Michigan in a sand dune right by the side of the beach, actually. And I conjured the Watcher to protect our circle. We had like 2 other workers there. And the first time I saw him, I just kind of saw it out of the corner of my eye, and I said, well, I thought it was one of my assistants, right? And I said, wait a minute, we're all wearing black robes, and the Watcher was in a white robe. And he looked like...
It was light. I don't know if it was white, but it was light. You know what I mean? It was light. It was like light.
It's hard to say when you're out there at midnight and the moon's out there and stuff and the stars. It's hard to say whether it was actually white or not, but he was in a white robe, and I was thinking in my back mind, I didn't want to get distracted because I was doing a ritual, but I was saying, wait a minute, nobody's wearing light colors here. We're all wearing black robes. So that was the Watcher, and he struck me as being an older person, but it looked like his eyes were kind of glowing, but he would move in a weird way, like interdimensional. He didn't move like we do. You know, he would be one place at one moment, and then you sensed him somewhere else, but you really couldn't be sure. But it was a successful evocation. You know, I knew he was out there, and I felt that we were being protected, because when you do a ritual, you evoke all sorts of things get attracted to. It's like a dead body, right? All sorts of flies and insects and stuff that's laying out in the woods, they get attracted to the miasma of it. And a ritual like that attracts all sorts of subtle kinds of life forms, elementals, larvae, things that kind of like go in and out among the dimensions. And the Watcher was designed basically to protect the magical circle from the interference of these kind of things. So you had some successful experiences with that book. I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad that you survived and you didn't get hurt or anything.
Oh, actually, I have some pretty good protection. I mean, and in fact, it was kind of funny, when I had my experience with him, I actually got the real sense, because I've done various types of rituals all my life, even when I was a child and really didn't know what I was doing, you know. But I got this sense that I'd met him before, and there was a kind of familiarity between us. So it was kind of like, my response was like, his response to me was like, oh, so you're finally doing this consciously, or something like that. And I was like, oh, I kind of know who you are. I guess I don't have to be so afraid of you like all these other people. And then it was sort of like, his response to me was like, you know, a lot of that fear stuff is just because people, is to make people feel, to make people take it seriously, you know, so that you understand that there's a real contact going on, so that you're not just sort of flippantly doing this kind of stuff. You know, so my experience was pretty good.
Lovecraft said the only, you know, the highest form of fear is the fear of the unknown, right? If you look at that quotation a little bit, you know, that's really the root of fear. You just are encountering something that you've never seen before. It's unknown, and you're not totally comfortable with it, and so that emotion translates into fear, but it's not like quite the same as fear of walking through a really bad neighborhood at night, and you might get mugged or you might get raped or something. That's a very human-centric kind of a fear, but the kind of fear we're talking about is actually a consciousness of the universe and everything is unknown, and that might possibly be indifferent. You know, it might not care about us in the least. We might be insignificant. Cosmic indifferentism.
Hey, guys, we got to go on break.
Uh-oh.
Summoning me, so we're going to take a break, and we'll be back in about 8 minutes. John, just don't hang up, and we'll come back and do the rest of the show.
Okay, can I walk away from the phone for a minute?
Yeah, that's fine.
We're all going to go pee.
Oh, well, I'm actually going to go drink Coca-Cola, so you pee and I'm drinking, okay?
Oh, okay.
I'll see you soon. I'm going to leave the phone right here.
We're back with our show invoking Necronomicon, necromonic characters from the be back shortly.
All actions have consequences, and ours have angered a god.
Hey, Mama said the way you move.
Big John. Big John.
Every morning at the
Church of Mabus. Into the light. That may be your fantasy. Metaphysical. The dark side.
Haunted houses, anything horror, all of it.
Deeper and 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 higher.
Oh yeah, me like it. You mean I could go mad? I'm shaking.
The Church of Mabus.
Oh, I'm stoked. I'm ready. This is awesome.
Back to the Church of Mabus radio show. I know one thing, I'm looking forward to that Evil Dead show on Starz. Starts in the fall. The only thing that gives me some reservations about it is only 30 minutes, but there's no commercials, and Sam Raimi is involved, so I'm really hoping that's good. It's funny how the Necronomicon's ingrained into so much. Like, even there's Stephen King stories where there's the Necronomicon's in it, and it's in all kinds of movies and stuff like that, the Evil Dead movies. I think that's where I first knew anything about it or even heard about it, was the Evil Dead movies. But I'm really hoping the show on Starz is really good. That starts up, I believe, in October. Yeah, October. I was going to say there's a Color Out of Space movie. I haven't seen it, but the reviews are so-so. It may be a foreign kind of thing, a foreign film of sorts or something like that. I've been wanting to check it out. Has average reviews. Well, everybody's here with me, right? I'm not talking to myself.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Just making sure. Oh, yeah, the one thing I wanted to ask you was, what's this about Peter Levenda and argues that Lovecraft has managed to establish a link between himself and Crowley's holy guardian angel, Aiwass? You may have...
Yeah, I'll tell you all about that. First of all, I want to say that The Dark Lord is the kind of book that I really love reading. If I see a book like that on the shelves, even if I'm on a strict budget, I'll immediately buy it. Any book that has the word Lovecraft in the title, Dark Lord or Kenneth Grant, I'll buy it. It's a very good book. Levanda's a very good authority when it comes to Aleister Crowley. He knows all about eons. He knows all about tantric magic, the left-hand tantric path, and he's very strong when it comes to that. But he's got some serious problems when he tries to develop the argument that we're talking about here. What he argues in the book is that Aleister Crowley in 1907 was writing a series of books called the Holy Books, and one of those books was called the Book of the Heart Girt with the Serpent, and Crowley introduces this really strange entity, and I don't have the book in front of me, but it's described as like a real evil figure, the horror of emptiness, I think he called it, with eyes like poisonous wells, and it was like described as a gnarled old fish, and it had demon tentacles. And what Levanda does is claims that this is actually Cthulhu. This is Lovecraft's Cthulhu. And he argues, moreover, that it's equivalent to Aleister Crowley's holy guardian angel, Aiwass, and Set Typhon, the god of the Typhonian tradition. And now, if you look at that argument, first of all, there's really no connection between Crowley's images. Crowley's gods and goddesses are very human-centric, like Egyptian gods. There's no real resemblance between an old gnarled fish and Cthulhu, who's a grand cosmic protoplasmic entity. So first of all, there's no real physical connection. And then what Levanda argues is this. He argues that when Lovecraft wrote The Call of Cthulhu, and he wrote that in 1926, he's got like various plot elements, plot strands in that story, and one of those strands take place in New Orleans in 1907. Right. And so he's claiming that because Lovecraft did one of his plot strands in 1907, which is the same year that Crowley wrote the Holy Books, that kind of proves that there's some kind of psychic connection. Now, I shouldn't have to tell anybody how specious this kind of arguing is. This kind of argument, this doesn't demonstrate any kind of psychic connection, surely not with Crowley, and surely not with Cthulhu at all, So this is the kind of reasoning that really bothers me sometimes when occultists do this sort of thing, because, a lot of mainstream people, they kind of tend to look down on occultists, especially those old-timer occultists, because they make those kind of arguments, and they indulge in obscurity and subterfuge and hoaxes. And I really don't have much sympathy for this kind of argument. What Levanda is doing here in The Dark Lord, he's actually claiming that the Dark Lord is Cthulhu, and it's equivalent to Set Typhon, and that they're all the same entity. But if you really read Lovecraft closely, there is no such thing as a Dark Lord in Lovecraft's work. If you wanted to pick something even close to it, you'd have to pick Nyarlathotep, I suppose, who walks around the faceless god draped up in black robe, but there is no dark god. So his arguments here are just kind of specious, in my opinion. I hope that answers.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you have to remember about Levenda, and I've read a lot of Levenda, like I've read practically everything the man has written, like all of his Hitler stuff and his Sinister Forces trilogy and everything. And Levenda very clearly has his own sort of interior agenda. And it really, he does sort of have a worldview in which there is like good and bad, and that there is good, that there is some kind of an evil force, and he's not going to be real clear about it, but it is there. But the problem, and the problem, as you say, is that H.P. Lovecraft has a completely different metaphysics. I mean, his metaphysics isn't that there is a God at all. He was an atheist. It has nothing to do with that. That's not who the ancient ones are.
The ancient ones, the great old ones, they're all like they're actually more akin to like quantum entities. That's what I like so much about Lovecraft. You're right. There isn't any real good or evil in Lovecraft at all. I mean, sometimes humans will interpret what people are doing as evil or good, or they'll be afraid.
There is
no evil, good morality.
Right. Well, I mean, it's clear that Lovecraft himself did not like squishy things.
No.
But that has nothing to do with whether something is good or evil or not. So, that's a problem that I've had with Lavenda generally. So if you have this kind of, it's almost a kind of a Gnostic view that whatever this evil thing is, it sort of manifests almost in a conspiratorial way in the physical world. And so you have to sort of see its tendrils, in various places. And even though I think he does come up with some really interesting evidence, like some of his evidence for, the survival of Hitler and stuff, I mean, at least it's interesting. There's certainly some interesting things going on there. That doesn't have anything to do, and he tries to link it all the time. That doesn't have anything to do with any kind of like larger, more metaphysical evil. Even if Hitler survived.
That's actually correct. Levanda's very good when it comes to like human-centric things, and he's real good with conspiracies. Simon's good with conspiracies too. It's a product of the '70s. There's all sorts of conspiracies. John F. Kennedy, there was a conspiracy behind that, conspiracy behind Lincoln. They love their conspiracies, but Lovecraft, when you get into the realm of Lovecraft, we leave the human behind. Lovecraft is not human-centric. Lovecraft is cosmic-centered, and his view, this is something I really love about Lovecraft. He died in 1937, but his view of the world and of the quantum realities, and his gods conform to that kind of view. His view is thoroughly contemporary right now, even though he died in the late 30s. It's very contemporary, and it's beyond good or evil. And you can try and make it conform. Lovecraft's friend August Derleth tried to make the whole thing be like good versus evil. Derleth was a Catholic. He was the founder of Arkham House, by the way. He kind of kept Lovecraft's name alive. But he wanted to impose his own good versus evil kind of thing on there in a Judeo-Christian way. There were elder gods who were kind of good, and they were supporting mankind, and then the great old ones, or the ancient ones, were evil, and they were trying to dominate the earth. But, that didn't fit. You can't impose that kind of system on Lovecraft. And Lavanda, I think, is actually trying to do that. So he's way off base there, but Lavanda is very fun to read. And I don't want to talk bad against him because his books are very stimulating and they're very fun to read, but certainly we can't just mash it all together and think it's all part of the same kind of system, because it's really not.
Jay is having some storms there coming in. I told him it was hell being summoned forth. So
we're conjuring something tonight. We're calling up.
Well, I would love to have some rain here. So conjure some rain here.
I've had a lot of rain up here in Michigan. I'm up in Michigan, by the way, which you were mentioning before the show came on. Somebody wrote a book about UFO contacts or experiences in Michigan. I'll have to pick up a copy of that. But we've been having continuous rain up here, and I've got a pumpkin patch behind my house, so those pumpkins are having a great time with all the rain. So I hope it comes your way.
That was Michael Newton, and his book's Ghost Hunting in Michigan. That was by Bradley Mickalou. I can't say it. Mikulka.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to have to pick up a copy of that, because I'm always interested in stuff that goes in here, paranormal stuff, sightings of Bigfoot, that sort of thing. We have sightings of Bigfoot up here in the woods, so. Haven't seen any dogmen yet. I'd like to see a dogman. Haven't seen one of those yet.
There are a lot of weird sightings about those going on lately. I've heard a bunch of different ones from a lot of different people.
Pennsylvania. Lots of them in
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, some intense ones. They've just published like some new stuff like in the last 2 days. some really intense sightings in Pennsylvania.
Definitely, and we've had some guests on who have seen them. One guy saw one right close, for sure, and that was pretty interesting. David Hawley, yeah, that was a definite. So when it comes to some of the like the Cthulhu Mythos, I know they have like a role-playing game based on that too. And
oh yeah.
Like, what are some of your favorite things that are Lovecraftian, like in that vein or genre, as far as the fiction? You know, some of the authors who do their own stories and some of the role-playing stuff. What are some of the things that Donald Tyson? I have that tarot. That's pretty creepy. Have you seen that?
Yeah, well, first of all, you know, I'm not a big gamer. I'm not a computer gamer at all, so I haven't played the games. I recognize Lovecraft's profound influence on popular culture, certainly. As for Donald Tyson, you know, Tyson's kind of an interesting character. I do have his deck. I have his Necronomicon tarot deck, and it's based on standard Waite Rider deck. I mean, it's got the same kind of figures and roughly the same kind of symbolism, except that there's no Christian symbol. But you can read it, like if you can read the Rider Waite tarot deck, then you can do the Necronomicon deck very easily because it's the same kind of images. But it's a little darker of a deck, you know, like I've done readings with it, and it's actually worked for me just fine. It's given me answers to things I have questions about, but it's a little bit darker than the other one. You know, I'm actually more comfortable with the Rider Waite deck because I've just been using it all my life, and I get better results from that. But it's a very good tarot deck. And Tyson himself is a very, very good writer and very interesting. He's actually trying to create an order, which he calls the Order of the Great Old Ones. And it's kind of a magical order, but I would argue it's actually a white magical order because what you do is you use the Great Old Ones to be mentors to the magician. The magician uses them as mentors to help them attain to the level of the Great Old Ones. And that, of course, works against the whole spirit of Lovecraft, because in Lovecraft, the Great Old Ones are certainly not mentors. I mean, they view human and humankind the way we view ants, basically. You know, if you get in your way, you don't even pay attention to them half the time, but you're totally indifferent to them. And if you get in their way, they just kind of step on you. You know, so his whole idea of making it into a white magical system, I think, is kind of flawed from the start. I don't think he's been able to get that organization started because most people view the Lovecraftian magic as being black magic, the way that I talk about, as opposed to white magic. Did I answer that question? I have a tendency to circle around questions and then kind of zero in. Or did I answer it?
Yeah, you did. What do you think about Lovecraft? Do you think he actually practiced magic, or was it the magic writing? No, he was a total materialist, an atheist. I mean, knew about Aleister Crowley because when in the 20s, that was when Crowley, I think in 1922 around there, that was when Crowley was getting a lot of bad publicity, you know, in the press because he was over in Italy with his Abbey of Thelema, and there were all sorts of lurid tales about black masses and human sacrifice and stuff, and Crowley was deemed the wickedest man in the world. So Lovecraft knew about Crowley because you couldn't help but know about Crowley. He was in all the papers, but he had a very low opinion of Crowley. In fact, he viewed Crowley as being a Satanist, you know, black magician, and as a poser too. He viewed Crowley as being part of the 1890s group that liked to pretend that they were dark magicians just to get press and stuff, but there was no other connection. You know, and certainly Lovecraft was not an unconscious magician or a magical practitioner. He was an atheist, and he was a materialist all his life. He didn't believe in the gods and goddesses he created. He didn't believe in any gods or goddesses. But the thing is that he couldn't keep them out of his dreams. And so he was kind of like a dual kind of a person. There was that one part, there was an atheist and a materialist, and there was a part, there was a dreamer. The dreamer, and all the darkness came in through the dreams, and then you get that uneasy dichotomy between the light and the dark in Lovecraft, and that's why his works are so powerful, because he would create a character like Kezia Mason in The Dreams in the Witch House, and he created her, and he was scared of her at the same time. He didn't believe that she had any powers, but he was still scared of her, and it was a combination of those two things that make his work so dynamic, at least to me. What do you think who influenced Lovecraft on any level?
Say that again?
Do you think Lovecraft was influenced by anybody on where he was drawing some of this stuff or some of his influences?
not so much by occultism. In Chapter 2, I talk about what he knew about Western magic. He knew a little bit about Western magic, okay? He'd read, like, Cotton Mather. He'd read, like, Murray's The Witch Cult in Western Europe. He read that. He read some of Arthur Edward Waite, and he read some of Eliphas Levi's works. But he didn't really believe in magic at all. He was just reading and studying it, so he'd have, like, some background information to put into his stories. He was mainly influenced by literary works. He was influenced by Lord Dasani, of course. He was influenced by Arthur Machen. In fact, you should read his essay, Supernatural Horror in Literature. That essay he wrote, let me think about it. He wrote that between 1925 and 1927, and there is a very good survey of the kind of literature that inspired him. So he was influenced more by literary models more than anything else. And he also read a lot of pulp fiction, weird tales and stuff. So he kind of evolved into writing this sort of thing. But he wasn't really influenced by occultism too much at all. He certainly wasn't a practicing magician. He didn't believe in magic at all.
I know in that, I can't remember that movie about Robert Howard, the Conan guy.
Oh, yeah.
There's a movie with Renee Zellweger. I always forget the damn name of the movie, but there's a movie, and in it, Vincent D'Onofrio plays him.
Oh, really? Good casting.
Yeah, and Renee Zellweger's like some girlfriend or something, or not girlfriend.
Yeah.
But
yeah, they had to throw that in. Yeah.
In it, he's conversing with H.P. Lovecraft, and they're writing back and forth. And they were talking about weird tales. But that movie's pretty disturbing if you've never seen it. The Whole Wide World, I believe it's called.
I'll have to take a look at that one. Lovecraft was friends with Howard. I don't think he ever met in person. Though Lovecraft wrote an enormous amount of letters, and he was in contact with a lot of people just through correspondence. So he knew Howard very well. They would exchange stories and give each other advice and stuff. But I don't think Howard had a girlfriend. Howard was like living with his mother all his life, and he was a very disturbed kind of a guy. You know, he committed suicide very young. He did that before Lovecraft.
I don't know if she was actually his girlfriend. They weren't. He wanted it to be. I found it's called The Whole Wide World, and it's on Amazon, like used for 84 cents. So it's not bad.
Oh, really? Well, I have to actually look that out. But I don't think he had a girlfriend. He was a very kind of withdrawn kind of guy, and like I say, he eventually committed suicide. So, but I'll have to check that.
In the movie, they fight a lot and get in arguments, and they never really get romantic. But it was kind of weird. But I'll read the review of it real quick. Driven by the electrifying performances of Vincent D'Onofrio and Renee Zellweger, The Whole Wide World is a touching true story of the star-crossed love. Oh, I guess that may not be true. Crossed love between writer Robert Howard and school teacher Novelin Price, the creator of Conan the Barbarian, Red Sonja. Howard has a small-town writer. Howard was a small-town writer with an insatiable appetite for larger-than-life heroism and fantasy. Shunned by the prudish locals, he was befriended by a feisty young teacher who offered him an unforgettable chance at love. They may have had that in for the Hollywood.
Well, they have to do that. Like I was saying before, when they do a Lovecraft thing, there's got to be a love interest. And there really isn't in most of the stories.
This is the one about the Conan guy.
Yeah. Yeah, well, him too, I don't know if he had a love interest. I don't know too much about him. I know that he was good friends with Lovecraft, though, so if they got them talking and communicating, that's probably accurate, But I'd have to see the movie to judge, I think.
Well, I don't know if this is true, but according to the movie, he's suicide.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But I'd have to look up the real true story of him. I have all the Conan books, but I don't know the true story. I was just more curious about what you knew about their letters back and forth and stuff like that, because I know that.
Well, I've read all of his letters. Lovecraft wrote so many letters. There's actually 5 volumes of letters in the Arkham House edition. S.T. Josie, I think, has added some more. So there's an awful ton of letters. And he wrote a lot to Howard and stuff. But usually when Lovecraft wrote, you didn't really talk about your relationships, or, I'm getting married tomorrow, or I just started a new job. That wasn't the kind of stuff that Lovecraft talked about. They would talk about things that they read, and Lovecraft was a great antiquarian, so he was traveling all around the country, visiting places of historical significance, so and architectural places and stuff. So that's the kind of stuff you get from Lovecraft. You know, but he wasn't the kind of guy like, hey, how's the old wife doing? That kind of stuff. It wasn't that kind of a conversation at all. You know, or hey, I just got a raise at work or something like that. These are not the kind of people these guys were, you know. So, but he was friends with Howard, and he admired Howard's. Howard wrote some Lovecraftian fiction before he died, you know. So there was an influence there, definitely. I'll have to check that movie out.
Have you? Yeah, it's pretty good. I like it. Have you seen the quote from H.P. Lovecraft about Republicans?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, that one's out on, you can find that out on...
yeah, I love that. I have to read that really quick.
Go ahead, read it.
This is from H.P. Lovecraft, the master of horror, about the Republicans. Oh, man, hold on. Some pop-up window came up. It's the devil trying to stop me.
The Watcher. It's a Watcher.
I had it up on my screen, and then I swear to God, this from Goodreads, this pop-up comes up, and now I can't even, there it goes. It's called, They're Trying to Stop Me, from Lovecraft about the Republicans. As for the Republicans, how can one regard seriously a frightened, greedy, nostalgic huddle of tradesmen and lucky idlers who shut their eyes to history and science, steel their emotions against decent human sympathy, cling to sordid and provincial ideas, exalting sheer exquisiteness, and condoning artificial hardship for the materially shrewd, dwell smugly and sentimentally in a distorted dream cosmos of outmoded phrases and principles and attitudes based on the bygone agricultural handicraft world, and revel in consciously or unconsciously mendacious assumptions such as the notion that real liberty is synonymous with a single detail of unrestricted economic license, or that a rational planning of resource distribution would contravene some vague and mystical American heritage utterly contrary to fact and without the slightest foundation in human experience. Intellectually, the Republican idea deserves the tolerance and respect one gives to the dead.
That sounds like Donald Trump to me. That's Trump.
Sounds like right now, and he wrote it.
Donald Trump's got to get that and put it on his campaign. That's got to be one of his slogans. That's great. That's Donald Trump.
The Donald
Except
Trump
that now he's pledged himself not to run against the Republicans.
Oh well.
Oh
yeah, I don't believe it.
He signed a pledge that he wouldn't run like start a third party thing.
Oh yeah, they're afraid. They're afraid he's going to dilute the votes. They always.
Oh yeah. I know.
He's going to take votes away from the front runners, you know. But Trump, you know, that sounds like Donald Trump. He's just like that.
On every
I don't
channel,
think he would use the word mendacious.
No.
On every channel, it's Trump, 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 Trump. But I swear they will not show one freaking speech by Bernie Sanders anywhere. So like a little glimpse of him, but no speech from Bernie Sanders except like on like some weird Democracy Now! Freedom channel on cable. I've seen CNN, and it's like Trump nonstop, psychotically. It's weird.
Well,
Bernie Sanders. They won't even give Bernie Sanders the time of day, and he's closing in on Hillary right now.
He sure is.
They barely.
He sure is.
They treat him like street trash. They don't like what he's saying at all.
Well, he's the second runner. He's the second runner now, you know. But Hillary, you know, she's got too many issues. You know, I can't see. I think she's okay, you know, but I can't see her getting the nomination. She's just got all those issues. All those financial transactions, and then her constant like her lying and stuff. And I can't see her getting the nomination. Sanders might just get it. You know, he might just get it. Unless
she's untrustworthy. She's going to get it.
Yeah.
And this guy's filling up parking garages and stadiums, and they won't even show him give one speech at all. That's just bizarre, like completely paid off.
Mainstream media for you.
He doesn't have that great hairstyle that Trump has, you know. That's the problem. He needs to get better hair, you know. That's what he needs.
He needs to get a rug.
Yeah, get some kind of weird hairstyle or something.
A mohawk. You know, I saw
a mohawk.
I saw an article that said Bernie Sanders influenced the Vermont punk rock scene. I was like, what? Really? How do you
very good Levand on that one.
And I was like, and of course I've seen pictures of Bernie hugging Willie Nelson. That's a big win for me.
Yeah. Mr. Reefer Head.
So Jay, what do you think about Lovecraft? Because I want to get you in here in case you go off air because of the storm that's rolling in because we summoned forth the hordes of the Necronomicon abyss.
Yeah, it's raining here now, but I think we'll be all right. You and William obviously have more knowledge on Lovecraft than I do. The thing that interests me is I was looking at the Amazon page for John's book, and around page 96, you bring up the Sumerian mythos and how it relates to the Necronomicon, which is H.P. Lovecraft. So could you kind of describe that? Because I wasn't able to read the whole thing because we're talking and all. But the Sumerian stuff is something that's really in my wheelhouse because I'm reading Zechariah Sitchin's 12 Planet series books right now. So I know the Sumerian stuff pretty good. So how does that work into the Necronomicon and as far as your book? And I don't know what chapter it is, but it's page 96 in your book.
Yeah, well, the whole Sumerian thing is some people have argued that Lovecraft's entities are actually based on Sumerian entities, and they're really not. I argue in my book that Lovecraft's entities are totally fictitious entities. They're the product of his imagination, and that's all, But ever since the Simon book came out, Simon argued that the Necronomicon is based on Sumerian or Babylonian sources, and in his version of the Necronomicon, he does have some names that are kind of like similar to Sumerian names, like Cthulhu, and he's got Azag-Thoth, and it's really hard to pronounce these things, Ishnigarab for Shub-Niggura, so there's a lot of similarities between these names, but the problem is that Lovecraft didn't base it on that. I mean, Simon's Necronomicon does seem to be based on Sumerian things. He claims the Necronomicon is actually a quasi-Sumerian manuscript. It goes back to Babylonian times and Assyrian sources, but none of that can be substantiated, and I don't think Simon deliberately took a bunch of Sumerian names and just simply constructed his Necronomicon from it, but there's really no connection between the Sumerian entities and Lovecraft's entities, and that brings another question, right? And some people argue if that's the case, if they're fictional entities, Lovecraft's great old ones are fictional, then how come they can work in magical sayings? They must access real gods and goddesses, right, if they work? And I would argue that the whole concept of fictional or real is very difficult to define. Like, if you guys have ever read, you guys read the Harry Potter books? Have you ever read the Harry Potter books?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Haven't read them, but I saw the movie.
In that last volume, The Deathly Hallows, Harry Potter, near the end of the book, has an experience where he goes into this alternate dimension and he encounters Albus Dumbledore, his mentor who died in the previous volume. And they have a conversation, then Harry Potter asks Dumbledore, is this real or is this happening inside my head? And Dumbledore says, well, of course it's happening inside your head, but why on earth should that mean that it's not real? And this is very an important statement. Just because something's not happening in the real world, but it's happening inside the head, it can still be real. And I would argue that even though Lovecraft's entities are not Sumerian entities and they're fictional, they're still real because they've been created and they've been given continuing reality by all the fans of horror and science fiction, all these gamers that you're talking about here that play the games, the people that listen to the kind of dark music, the conversations that we're having right now about them. All these give them actual tangible reality, and they can function thus as archetypes, as magical batteries, and then you can use them in actual rituals because of that. So they're fictional, but that doesn't mean they're real. Now, I hope I answered that one. I meandered a little bit for that one.
No, I think you did. Just a quick, if I can go back to where your book is, what you said about the Sumerian and the Cthulhu Necronomicon is that most of it was translated from an Arabic original, and that obviously over thousands of years it had been, what was originally Sumerian would have been changed and adulterated and distorted. So if he used it as a inspirational point, whatever was original Sumerian is now lost in what the old ones are now. And with the Sumerians, their book, the creation myth, is 7 clay tablets and is translated into the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran as the 7 days of creation. And it's a little more involved in the Sumerian cuneiform text. But most of the gods have been, a lot of people have translated them and seen them in other mythos, like I believe Enlil and Ninhursag are Osiris and Isis in Egypt, and Enki is Set in Egypt, and that also Osiris is again, he's Enlil in Sumeria, but he's Jesus in the Bible. So are you able to do that with any of the Cthulhu gods, or any of them relatable to any ancient gods at all, or are they just they're so original that they're nothing like anything before?
Well, the thing interesting about being a magical practitioner, whatever works, like the chaos magicians say, whatever works, if you can get it to work magically, then it doesn't matter. So if a person's doing a magical ritual and they want to connect one of these entities, like if they want to connect Azathoth, which is a Lovecraftian entity, if they want to connect that with Azagthoth or with some Sumerian gods to give it more power, fine. Let them go and do it. There's not any clear lines between these things at all. Whatever works, works and stuff. But all I'm saying, the way that Lovecraft himself visualized them, I don't see any connection between that and Sumerian entities. I don't think Lovecraft knew anything really that much about Sumeria, and I don't think there was that much scholarship about Sumeria, if you want my honest opinion, in the 1930s. So I don't think there was anything available for him to know about in any case. But Lovecraft created these things, and any way that you can generate them or to generate magical power, any way that you want to see them is fine. So I don't think there's any barriers to that at all. But I would just argue that the way that Lovecraft conceives them is very sophisticated. And you'll notice that these other derivatives you're talking about, like Osiris becoming Jesus and stuff, those are all human-centric. You notice all those gods and goddesses are human-centric. They have kind of a human form, and they relate to human concerns, and Lovecraft's entities are just totally, it's like a fresh dose of entities, because they show almost no connection with humanity at all, and that seems to be more realistic to the way the cosmos really is, the way the universe really is. But anything goes. If you want to view them as Sumerian entities, and it works for you, and what I determine as being working, whether you get your magical results that you want or not, if you get your results, good, more power to you.
Well, I think that where some people maybe draw the connection between Sumerian stuff and H.P. Lovecraft, I don't know that Lovecraft himself did that. There was actually one well-known Assyriologist who kind of pioneered the reading of cuneiform in the early 20th century. His name was Campbell Thompson or something like that, and he had just published by the 20s, he had just published some of the first renderings of cuneiform, but they hadn't found Ashurbanipal's library yet, I don't think. So they didn't have the huge number of texts that they have now. But what Campbell Thompson does talk about is he talks about, because I've read some of his stuff, he talks about there are these two layers of gods. There appears to be, the kingly gods of the city, and then there appear to be these gods of the wilderness, like Humbaba, who shows up in the Gilgamesh stuff, and that kind of thing. And he posits, and of course this is before there's any kind of sophisticated understanding of even Sumerian mythology, that there may have been these older deities, more ancient deities, that then were supplanted by the more warlike deities that you find in the city. And that's where I think maybe the Necronomicon because if you look at the Necronomicon, there are actually two layers of deities. Most of the invocations are actually for a group of deities that are called the Elder Ones, but then there's another batch of them that are kind of underneath that are called the Ancient Ones. And they seem to be more related to, or more connected to, I guess, whatever Lovecraft might have been interested in, at least in the literature. That's what the Necronomicon seems to be doing. Because that's why I think some people have drawn the connection that maybe these ancient ones that the Sumerians were talking about are implied by H.P. Lovecraft, where I don't think Lovecraft is doing that at all. I mean,
No,
he does in Mountains of Madness imply that there was a war between two groups of entities. But neither of those groups of entities have anything to do with us. And that war occurs between the two of them, and we kind of see the results of that, in the ruins of the most ancient of them. So, I mean, that's where I think I see where some people have drawn the connection, because in the Necronomicon they talk about this whole other layer, and they have like the sigil for Humbaba, which to me is hilarious. And the sigil of Tiamat, and all of these older deities. Tiamat was the great old goddess of chaos that the elder gods tore to pieces in order to create the world. And maybe and some people I think have, and I think Lavenda has actually drawn some of the conclusions, because he does this in one part of his Sinister Forces trilogy, where he talks about how these are these kind of subterranean gods or subterranean forces. And I mean, when I read that, when I finally understood all that, I was like, wait a minute, that's just not right.
It's not. The humans seem to love having. They get scared. They're alone in the universe, and they seem to want to have the comfort of like some big father figure, a mother figure up there that'll protect them. And a lot of people have interpreted Lovecraft that way. The elder gods, they call them the elder gods. Now Lovecraft only refers to one elder god, noted in an earlier story, but there is no war between the elder ones who are helping us and the ancient ones, or the great old ones who are actually trying to dominate the world. There is no great war in Lovecraft between those two at all. And there is no dichotomy like that, despite the fact that he refers to elder gods. There is no dichotomy, because Lovecraft was totally comfortable with the fact that it's only a human weakness that perceives that we need a big father or a big mother up there to help us against evil things, good versus evil. That's not in Lovecraft. It's in Lavanda, because he needs to have that for some reason. He needs to see that, and it's in a lot of humans. The Christians need to see that. They need to feel that there's something out there. But look at the Old Testament. That God in the Old Testament is not like the kind of God we have now. That was a very vengeful God, a very forceful God, a type of God, the God of Abraham, who actually destroyed the entire earth with floods because he got upset because man did something which he should have known that man was going to do in advance, because he's supposedly all-knowing, right? So why did that catch him off guard? This vengeful, like a big spoiled child kind of God you see in the Old Testament. We don't have that God anymore. We got the loving, kind God that sacrificed himself for humanity, Jesus, and he's come to save all of us. Humans still want that comfort. But when you read Lovecraft, and I think this is why he's so powerful, he doesn't give you that comfort at all. There's nobody that's helping us. These things out here, they might not even be gods. We can't even see them half the time. We can't conceive of what they look like or what they are, but they don't care anything about us. We're just in the way, and that's it. And someday our little 15 minutes of fame are going to be gone, and then it's gone. My book is gone. Shakespeare's gone. Picasso's gone. Leonardo da Vinci. It's all going to be gone. We're that insignificant.
And that's why I like that movie Prometheus, where they go look for the creator, and it does kill them.
There is no creator. The theory of evolution explains very easily how we got here. And if we look at the way the universe is, at least according to quantum physicists, we've got some pretty good ideas of what's going to happen at the end, too. Now I'm actually voting for a zombie apocalypse, but I suspect that probably won't be the apocalypse. But there will be an apocalypse sometime. There always is.
My theory on our creation is aliens stopped by and shot a load and then kept on trucking.
Close. They were here for quite a while, and they did introduce their DNA into ancient humans, and that's really put out in the creation myth tablets of text. Yeah.
They came on the world.
Yeah.
Well,
I call it species.
That's a theory, and there's nothing wrong with that theory. I kind of like it myself, but it's hard to support these kind of theories, but I like it. Everything's open as long as it makes humans better humans and more creative and ethical.
Yeah.
I don't care what people believe in as long as they're not harming other people and not forcing their beliefs on other people. So I don't care what people believe.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like I said, with the creation myth, they're really more elaborate than the creation myth of the Bible. But if you read it, it's very interesting. It sounds a lot like the Bible. The stories are saying they have three Noahs in that story. Gilgamesh plays a part of it. But what it sounds like to me more, in that way I describe it, is in our creation is species rape, where this alien species came to Earth. They tried to mine minerals. They couldn't do it. The work was too hard. So they created us to do their work for them. And when they were done, they were going to kill us with the flood, but one of them decided they didn't. So if you read the Bible and read all those same stories, it sounds like you're talking about 3 or 4 or 5 different gods, because one's good, one's nice, one's vengeful, one wants to kill everybody, and one wants to save everybody. And it gets so convoluted in the Bible. Reading the creation stories from the Sumerian as they're being translated now, it's tremendously how close it is to today's myths of God and Jesus and Noah and all of the old texts of the Bible.
Yeah, because the Sumerians were humans, and humans have to have their comfort level. They have to create gods because they don't like being alone in the universe. And then they understand good versus evil, so some gods have to be good, some have to be evil.
Well, the Sumerians didn't even call them. They actually defer to them as human beings or creatures. I don't think they actually call them gods in their words. But yeah, you're right. And in both of the texts, the Sumerian text and the Bible text, the gods, or the Anunnaki as they're called in Sumeria, they create us in their image. So if we're good and evil and we create wars and we have all the same things the gods do, what does that mean? The gods are just like us. They have their wars, they have their lusts and their good stuff and bad stuff. They're just as flawless or flawed as we are.
Oh, I kind of like the Greek ones myself. They're actually more frank about it. But I believe man creates gods in his own image, and then what he does, he worships it, and then he talks about the gods creating man in their own image, But I think man is at the beginning, the root of all this good and evil is just man, and man's insecurities, I think.
Yeah, that's a good part of it, too.
So, hey, when it comes to the black magicians that are practicing in the Lovecraft type occultism, or that are connected to the Lovecraft as far as magic is concerned, what is their ultimate goal? I mean, are there some of them that are hell-bent and they think they're going to usher in madness on the earth via Cthulhu? Is that like the ultimate goal of some magicians when it comes to
magicians are like just unique people, basically. It depends on what their worldview is and what they want to get out of it, all the modern systems now, the modern black magical systems, and I'm not talking so much about the voodoo religion or the Wiccan religion, because these all predated Lovecraft. They were pretty well established before he came on the picture, So the influence there is largely metaphysical in terms of their entities and stuff. But the ones that I deal with in the book, the Typhonian tradition, the Church of Satan, and this includes all of the Setian temples that have derived from that, and then the chaos magicians, and then there are all sorts of other just individual practitioners that don't really consider themselves alive to any kind of grand magical system at all. All these people have different agendas. Now, I'm sure that there are some crazy ones out there that feel that if they perform certain rites, that they're going to open the gates and the universe, the way that Lovecraft described it in the Dunwich Horror, where the world would be cleared off. It would be cleared off. In other words, all the humans would be erased from the planet, and like they were vermin. And then what would be left would just be simply the entities, and then people that helped initiate their coming into being. I won't want to be one of those humans, by the way, because I would be at a severe disadvantage. So I'm sure that there are some people out there that actually believe that. Most people interpret it kind of philosophically. They view the clearing off the earth. You do the rituals, and what that means is just to change your consciousness, where you become more spiritual, more aware, and more knowledgeable. And that's where my definition of the black magic kicks in. More knowledge and more power. Think of it as an ant. There's an ant down there, and we want to kind of stamp out the anthill. But what if we looked down there and we saw an ant wearing a robe, and it was trying to worship it. It was trying to be human. Well, we might feel a little mercy for that ant. We might pick it up. We might put it under glass. We might study it, right? And so I think there are people that hope that if we do this, it'll change consciousness, and then they'll get a wider experience, and that's kind of a white magical goal. But I doubt that, too, because, I mean, it's still an ant, right? There's no way it's going to ever turn into a human, and a human is not going to turn into a great old one. It just doesn't happen that way, unless you believe in the Christian myth, where you're reborn and you're recycled, or you go to some other alternate level of reality. So it depends on the magicians that are practicing. Some of them it's just knowledge and power. Some of them it's just fun. Some of them it's for changing consciousness. And there's that small core of people that think they're going to wipe out the earth, and then they're going to dominate the earth. You know, so it depends on who you're talking about, what they're using the Lovecraftian mythos for when they do their rites. I hope I answered that one correctly. I don't know if I did or not.
And in doing so, you have let loose the rifts of hell.
Yeah.
Yes. Isn't that good? So what do you think about that, Wham? What's the goal of you? Do you think there are magicians out there that are bringing their whole goal is to bring madness on the earth and devour Earth?
Well, probably. I mean, I see, you know, from my perspective, I see a whole bunch of them in the Middle East, and they call themselves Daesh, you know. They think they're doing something else, but they, in fact, are invoking chaos and murder and horribleness because they believe that the world is so fucked up, so screwed up that it needs to be destroyed in order to save it. So, you know, I mean, that to me is a form of evil magic. And you know, I come at that obviously from my position as a Sufi and knowing sort of from an interior level of that tradition, of the Islamic tradition, what they're doing, you know, what they're invoking, because there is a magical tradition there, and it runs right to the heart of the religion, and you know, and Sufis know this, and actually even traditional Muslims know this, which is why it kind of scares the living crap out of people, you know. So, but anyway, I do think that there are people who are trying to exercise chaos and control things. I think that there are some people that are doing that more consciously than others, and I actually do believe that there are some people that are under the influence of what I would call predatory kind of energies, you know, that feed off of fear, feed off creating fear. I don't know how personal they are. I don't think of them as the old ones, but I do think that, like, there are either beings or thought forms or types of consciousness. I don't know whether they have an independent existence of us or not, but I do think that you can create sort of a sucking vortex, if you will, of stuff that kind of can generate its own consciousness at a very rudimentary level and can take over things and kind of, you know, self-perpetuate bad stuff. And the only reason I say that is because I had an encounter with such a thing at one point in my life, quite inadvertently, and I had to like back right out of it because I had never encountered evil like that. And, you know, I was actually in the process of trying to just simply understand some stuff that had happened with a person who was a friend of mine, and I did a conjuring, I did some trance work, and I stepped right into the middle of this guy's reality, and it was like, whoa, I need to leave now, you know. And so I got out of there, but it was like, so I do think that there are realities like that, you know. I kind of make a distinction similarly to what John does, in that I draw a distinction between people who do evil and people who do what I mean, I guess people call it black magic. I call it the left-hand path, because I think that that's a little, I don't get into the white-black, you know, color usage so much. But the left-hand path is a very specific kind of mystical and magical path, and it's defined in different ways by different people, different groups. You know, the left-hand path in Hindu Tantrism is very different than the left-hand path for the Temple of Set. And I agree that I think that I think it's interesting that a lot of people have made Crowley into a left-hand path person, because I don't think he was, really. Because that's certainly not what his goal was ultimately.
No, Crowley was not a very nice guy. Okay, he tended to live off people.
He was a butthead. He was an egotistical butthead.
Yeah, he was that, and he was, you know. But I think he was a white magician. I don't think he was a black magician, because he wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, his goal wasn't just power. His goal was to really understand the fundamental nature of reality, and to join with it in some way. And you know, he had some egoistic fixations on power, and kind of farbled with that, and he paid the price for it in terms of, you know, his STDs and his drug addictions. You know, so he paid the price for his farbling with that. But ultimately, I don't think that that's what his goal was, because when push came to shove, I mean, he wasn't nice to a lot of people, highly manipulative, very narcissistic. But when push came to shove, you know, he didn't actually, he always backed away from the truly evil thing. Because that's not what he really wanted to do. And I think it's because he probably ran into people that did the real evil thing from time to time, and kind of came to know the difference. But, you know, even what Kenneth Grant is about, you know, and he's the one that really, we haven't talked about him at all, and he's the one that has really kind of tried to weave H.P. Lovecraft into this in various ways.
Yeah, I got a whole chapter on that one, the Typhonian Lovecraft and the Typhonian tradition. That's all about
right. And I appreciate Kenneth Grant very much and have read him deeply, and I think he's just wrong. You know, I just think he's wrong. I think that that was what he wants Crowley to be. You know, he wants Crowley to be this, and he wants H.P. Lovecraft to be this, because that's what they were for him.
Yeah, Grant was arguing that Lovecraft was an unconscious magician, and he was also arguing that Crowley's system was actually a Typhonian system, and that Aiwass was actually Set Typhon, and none of that can be demonstrated when you look at Crowley's works or when you look at Lovecraft's works. But I do argue that Kenneth Grant was probably one of the most creative occultists that's ever lived, you know, and he was creating, he actually forwarded the tradition, but he was trying to adapt these things to suit his own preconceptions again. So I think you're right. He was wrong.
We're getting to the end of the show here, and I want to squeeze in one last question before we go.
Sure.
Do your give us your website or whatever if you have one. How did Lovecraft die? What do you know about his death?
He died of cancer. He had poor health. He was always eating like our cans, like our tin cans and stuff. He ate a lot of ice cream and stuff. He didn't smoke, or he didn't take drugs or drink or anything like that. But he developed cancer in his later years. And then he died in the hospital. And what was really interesting about is a lot of these people, they're self-professed atheists. On their deathbed, they'll convert. Like Oscar Wilde was an atheist all of his life, but when he was dying, he got received into the Catholic Church. So a lot of them recant, which tells me that they didn't really believe firmly in what they were doing all their life. But Lovecraft didn't do that. Lovecraft knew he was dying, and he didn't recant at the end. You know, he held on to his belief that there was no God, there was no salvation. He was firmly convinced that he was going to rot in the grave after he died, and he held on to it. That's kind of noble to me. That he could still hold on to his conviction stuff, but he just died simply of cancer, and of course he died before his time. He thought he was a complete failure, you know, when he died. He thought nobody would ever hear him. He was just a pulp writer. He never gotten a book published in his lifetime, ever. He had those stories published, but he couldn't get one book published. So he thought he was a complete failure when he died. If he was alive today, he'd be richer than Bill Gates. You know, he'd be slightly amazed at what we're talking about here now.
So, John, what do you think happens when you die?
Well, I have to reserve judgment on that. there's a part of me that would like to think that life goes on. And when I look at the world, I look at nature, and I don't see positive or negative, but I see things continuing. If you look at nature, things do seem to perpetuate. The universe itself seems to perpetuate. They talk about the expansion, the Big Bang. I see things moving forward. And I think that if a person's consciousness and their mind is developed enough, that death doesn't necessarily mean the end of it. But quite frankly, I really don't know. And until I certainly can't embrace the Christian mythology because I have to be proven, like I have to be proven who Lavanda or Simon is, right? In order for me to embrace that, God would have to come directly to me or Jesus, and they'd have to tell me directly, I'm really Jesus, and they'd have to convince me that they are, and then I might give some modicum of belief to them. But right now, I'm really not sure what happens. I'd like to be hopeful about it. I'm a very positive person, but I have to, I'm afraid, reserve judgment on that.
Well, nobody really knows, I guess, until they do it, and then you're dead.
and nobody comes back. I mean, we got the paranormal, and some people say, yeah, we're communicating with the spirits of the dead, and a lot of times they might be, they might not. I don't know. I derive hope from the fact of psychics that actually seem to be in communication, because that kind of promotes a view of longevity, and then I won't die. I feel I might not die, but I really don't know. The evidence is just not strong enough. At least empirically.
For me personally, I think there were some kind of light beings. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen Ron Howard's Cocoons, with those old people in the swimming pool and the light beings.
Yeah.
I think Opie did some LSD on that one. But after my dad died, I saw light beings, and I also had some UFO-type encounters and saw light beings. And I came across a book by Jeffrey Michelov called Roots of Consciousness, and some astronomer or astrologer, an astronomer, said that some stars are indeed deities, and I saw that light being right after the period when my dad died, and I'm wondering if that's what we are. We're like weird, friggin' cocoon celestial tadpoles.
Well, I hope we continue. I really do. I would like to continue. I would like to continue creating works in different dimensions and different mediums, and stuff. But again, I just have to reserve judgment until I've got more evidence.
Are you a realist?
I don't know if I'm a realist. I'm certainly not a pessimist, okay? I'm a very positive person. And I believe that evil is defined by actions and behavior, that it burns itself out. It burns itself out. Nature burns it out eventually by the natural process, including terrorism. All that's going to burn itself out. That's not the route to go. But I don't know if I'm a realist either. I'm not sure what I am. I'm not an atheist. I'm an agnostic, I guess. I'm just not sure. What I am.
Well, you're just open-ended.
I want to be open to everything, but I know one thing: I'm not evil. I'm a positive person. I believe in going forward, being productive, being creative, and any way you can perpetuate that and perpetuate culture, all ramifications of culture throughout the world. I believe in that, even though I also think that someday there's going to be an apocalypse. It's not going to be God coming, but it's going to be something, and then it's all going to go away. But while it lasts, I think we should perpetuate and be positive and move forward. That's what I really believe, but I can't prove it.
I know who's going to usher it in. It's Donald Trump, and if you saw him in Alabama and looked at the audience, you would know why.
Yeah. Good old Trump. Always good for a laugh. Did you want me to tell the name of the website? Because I've got, on the website, I've got, a bunch of things about Lovecraft. I have a bunch of book signings and stuff throughout the Midwest, too, and in Chicago, and in here, and in Wisconsin. So all that's listed on my website, too. Did you want me to give the website name for those interested listeners?
What's your website?
It's just www.johnlsteadman, STEADMAN.com. And I hope everybody will buy the book, because I've already got 85,000 words to my follow-up book already written. And so the publishing company will probably publish my second one if this one sells good. So I hope all you charming listeners out there will buy the book. It'll actually be quite an interesting read for you, give you a lot of information about this topic.
I'm going to have to buy it. The first chapter was actually compelling. If I didn't have to put it down to get on the radio, I would have kept on reading what was on Amazon. So I'm getting it myself.
Excellent.
God, you guys are wonderful. I love talking to you three guys. You guys, you girls, they use the term guys now to refer to men and women. I know it's on TV and stuff, but it's been really fascinating talking to you people. I hope you keep going with this stuff. You know, this is really stimulating stuff. Paranormal, Bigfoot, you know, my crazy book and stuff. This is really something that we need.